when I saw the fifth round of the Alexander Usyk versus Daniel Dubois fight, I honestly thought to myself that this was going to be curtains for Alexander Usyk and this was going to be an upset. A couple of things that I had noticed in this fight that I think is worth mentioning. These two guys are 50-50 with each other, and it didn't seem that way going into the fight. Why is that? Because you have to understand, and what I've mentioned previous podcasts and previous contents and videos, is that when it comes to the fight game, it is all about the matter of inches that's going to dictate the winners and the losers of the fight. And within those small inches matters in which your next sequence is either going to be your checkmate move or the move that's going to get you checkmate. And in this case, this is one of those situations where the best way I can describe it is, you guys ever played UFC online games or a boxing video game? For example, if let's say you and your friends or your homies or mates are sitting around with a PlayStation, or let's say maybe the Xbox or something to that extent, and then one guy is winning and the other guy is losing, all of a sudden you hit the reset button. One guy hits the restart button on their Xbox controller, on their PlayStation, or whether it would be, let's say, a mobile game, or maybe even one of those PC games, right? Because you're just like, I don't like the results, so I'm going to change it. With the alteration being influenced by the referee. Now, it's often said in combat sports, and especially in MMA and in boxing, when I mean MMA, I mean in recent times with Paddy Pimblett, where they had some questionable judges and their scores going after the fight with the likes of the Jared Gordon fight, right? A lot of people didn't agree that Jared Gordon won that one. Well, a lot of people didn't agree that Alexander Usyk got hit with a shot that was dirty. A lot of people thought that it was a clean shot. And because of this 50-50 scenario they had going on, it was Alexander Usyk that ended up finishing him in the end. And because of that, that is the result that history tells us. Because what did I say in the previous podcast concerning the history of the conquerors and the ones that are being conquered and the ones that have to explain why they lost and things of that nature? This is what's going on right now. Alexander Usyk, under history, is the one that won. Now, although in the eyes of many hardcores, in the eyes of many Daniel Dubois supporters, yes, that is the case to be made as to him being able to finish Alexander Usyk like that in ways that nobody has ever done. For me, in my opinion, if I could just take the objective lens out of it, in my opinion, I honestly think that Daniel Dubois won that fight and we have ourselves the unified champion of the world in him right now. But that's not the case in the official statements of everything else. So that in and of itself is problematic in trying to understand the fairness of the competitive architecture that is within boxing. Because now all the tinfoil hat conspiracies are somehow coming to light with all these things, with the judges interfering with the results. And then you have people that score for one fighter over the other in very questionable ways. Now, is it questionable, or is it the vantage point from which the decision was made? Meaning that the referee had to act in this moment of time that he did in order for him to give the best fair results that he can possibly make. And what did he do? He went and told Alexander Usyk that he was going to give him 4 more minutes in terms of a number, an arbitrary number that, by the way, doesn't even exist in MMA. And by the way, he shed him 1 less minute, because in MMA, if you get a low blow or if you get an illegal kick when you're, let's say, both of your knees are down or things of that nature, just like what happened with Aljo in his first fight with Peter Yan, they give you a maximum of 5 minutes. Most guys, because you know that MMA fighters are the toughest fighters in the world, a lot of them wouldn't go out and take it. But a lot of these boxing guys, guess what they do? They go out and they take the extra minutes. But in this case, Alexander Usyk was protesting the entire sequence to the referee, encouraging him to do so. So there's a lot of fishy things going on. And obviously, one of the things that you can take away from this is that both of these guys are in a 50-50 situation. It just so happens that they both finished each other, one in an official time, one in a non-official time, and the other in both ambiguous sequences to where we can only go by the official results of history, but not necessarily understand the fact that Alexander Usyk is now susceptible to body shots. So how is Fury going to respond to this in terms of how he sees his chances against him? I think that Fury does see something now and probably even more motivated after the Francis Ngannou fight if he somehow pulls off on that one. And I remember hearing the top-ranked guys earlier in the broadcast saying, well, after this happens, because we know the result, this is just an extravaganza or this and that. But again, combat sports, you never know what's going to happen. And this goes into question about Daniel Dubois' statements about Anthony Joshua getting dropped by him in sparring. Now, we have a lot of plausible evidence that says that this is the truth. And then earlier on the night, we also had UFC Singapore. Now, what was great about this card, you had Max Holloway doing exactly what Max Holloway does, out-jabbing Korean Zombie, and Korean Zombie taking a lot of damage because he's just not the most defensively sound 145er out there, if not the least defensively sound MMA fighter in the top 10 of all time. But nonetheless, Max Holloway also got tested because guess what? Chan Sung Jung, Korean Zombie, takes risks. And if you want to take on a highly technical fighter like Max Holloway, this is what you got to do. You got to take a risk, just like Alexander Usyk and Daniel Dubois. Daniel Dubois is not the most technical guy out there. They even made a joke saying that Daniel Dubois is a poor man's Anthony Joshua. Well, here it is. Lo and behold, he is, in a way, but at the same time, being that Anthony Joshua overthinks and has a susceptibility of trying to make everything perfect, Daniel Dubois is not that guy, and he'll go and swing away, and he happened to have the right game plan this time of going to the body. And now the fight ended the way that it did, very controversial. What is going to happen in the midst of that? Will this interfere with the Undisputed Championship? That's a great possibility. And then you also got to think, maybe perhaps Frank Warren is in on this because he wants to extend making money in terms of having a rematch. And then if Francis Ngannou and Tyson Fury somehow end up competitive, let's say even if Tyson Fury wins and it's still competitive, another rematch, more money. Now you have a rematch with Dubois and Usyk. Now you have a rematch with Francis and Tyson Fury, possibly. More money on the Frank Warren Queensberry Promotions Bank. But maybe there is some kind of nefarious plan around this particular event that we've seen today in boxing, and maybe perhaps it's just the fact that it was in Poland and it was a pro-Ukrainian crowd. And remember what I said in the preview to this fight, Ukraine and Poland have a very good relationship, and lo and behold, what did we find out in the broadcast? There's a lot of refugees that come there as a result of the war, and obviously I mentioned in the other podcast that, well, they are an ally of the United States, so it's only right that they are aligned with Ukraine in that matter and for them to host him in that kind of way. And look who they had in the broadcast. They had Zelensky. So again, it's a matter of debating of whether this is propaganda, sports washing, or just trying to get your message out there, or maybe you really are doing the right thing for the world and you want to convey this message for everyone to see in a sporting event like this, and also creating more clout for Usyk. Maybe not so much in the United States, but within the Eastern European regions of where he's from. Obviously Poland, being that they are a harboring nation to the people of Ukraine. But moving on with Max Holloway, you had Chan Sung Jung retire right after that crazy matchup. And look, here's the thing. This is one of those things that's warranted for a long time. Chan Sung Jung missed out a lot of his years when he had to go to the military back when he was probably in his mid-20s all the way to his late 20s, and then going into his early 30s, and we missed out a lot of those prime years. But nonetheless, he came back, had a few good fights, and this is the result of it. It just never ends good for anybody. I mean, and then you had Max Holloway with the story that he had going on with the fires that are going on in Maui right now. I mean, look, it's a very tragic thing, but he was able to manage to create an escape for a lot of these people that were watching him and supporting him, especially for the Hawaiian MMA fans. And then it was a great story for Chang Sun-jung because he got to retire in a very big fight night, right? Not the biggest pay-per-view, but the perfect type of recognition that he deserves. Conor McGregor mentions him, well done, Korean Zombie, what a goer. Man, Max effing Holloway, what a shot performance, classic Zombie, classic Holloway, tremendous stuff. Yeah. And then you seen in the at the broadcast Korean Zombie bowing to his gloves that he took off. And then Smith gets a decision win over Ryan Spann, very close split decision. I mentioned that Anthony Smith is literally like the Derek Chisora of MMA. In the terms of, you look at their record, it's almost identical. They're sort of like guys that were winning a lot and then losing a lot and then coming back and taking the toughest fights, and they were the fighter's fighter. And the same result that happened with the Gerald Washington fight, it almost seems identical with Anthony Smith. Now, great on Anthony Smith to open up with the fight with the Muay Thai stance that he did in order to try to check some of the kicks that Ryan Spann was throwing at him. You've seen the cut that he suffered from one of the hooks that Ryan threw at him. He kept fighting on and persevering. We saw everything that we needed to see in Smith, knowing that he is a tough guy, knowing that he can persevere, but also knowing that he has the technical capabilities to be able to deal with Ryan Spann in terms of adapting, in terms of switching his style, and in terms of knowing how to win points when it matters the most. And then Giga Chezaz gets got a win tonight. Let's see here. A whole bunch of other good cards in the UFC tonight. I want to make sure that I mention all of them. So he gets a decision over Alex Caceres. Just a straight stand-up fight. There was literally no takedowns or anything like that, or any ground and pound, or no ground or wrestling or jiu-jitsu for any of this particular match. What you had with Giga Chikazity is pretty much a guy that can use the basics but yet really tear you apart with it. And then Renan Nakamura gets a decision as well over Fernie Garcia. Aaron Blanchfield gets a decision win over Talia Santos. And there's a lot of hype going into Aaron Blanchfield, right? She has that big win over Molly McCann, which we knew that Molly McCann was just not in that type of world level as she was, and she proved that. But tonight, Aaron Blanchfield, with the hype that she got after that Molly win, we got to see her tested tonight. And I think that she attempted 14 takedown attempts. So you got to understand how much of a grinding fight this was that she had to endure with her. And then Junior Tafa gets a first-round knockout against Parker Porter. Not a lot of takedowns in this fight as well. Just a straight stand-up, 1 minute and 24 seconds into the fight, and Junior Tafa gets a knockout and finishes off Parker Porter. It's always hard to say his name multiple times. In the prelims, you had Waldo Cortez Acosta defeating Lucas. Tashomi Kazama gets a first-round TKO against Garrett Armfield gets a TKO against Kazama. And then Michael Olajenchik gets a first-round knockout with 4 minutes and 16 seconds into the first round against Chitty. And what's great about that fight is you saw Chitty was winning, and then out of nowhere, Mikel showed his tenacity, him being able to come back, and his durability and his chin. And then just being able to come back and get the knockout and the TKO finish. And Kenan Song gets a decision win over Bedoya. Billy Joff gets a first-round knockout against Kinoshita. And then J.J. Aldridge gets a second-round TKO. And Choi Sung-yu gets a decision win to start off the card against Jarno Ernest. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the fight night for August 26th, 2023. Now, how amazing is this, right? A lot of people forget that this was the anniversary of the Conor McGregor fight between Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor back in 2017. It's crazy how time flies like that, right? But nonetheless, one of the things that you can take out of this is the overwhelming theme that comes on in every other post-fight show every week, is that this is one of the greatest times to be a combat sports fan, a combat sports athlete, and being involved in a combat sports realm, even with just media content and everything in between, because of just these great matchups that are coming every week, and then the way that they deliver with even the most lackluster fights that you don't think are going to deliver, they end up delivering in ways that you never expected. And what do you call that? As I segue into the conclusion of this video, it is the theater of the unknown, and we are going to enjoy the fights. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.